John Mangan, welcome to the Dale Stark Show.
It's crazy to be here, man.
Yeah, you got to see the pig, right?
Yeah.
Life's good.
I actually enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would. I mean, it's like a celebrity cow pig. I mean, I don't even know how to process that.
Oh, man. So I first heard about you from our mutual friend, Jay. And
These good people.
he had a pretty amazing career with a lot of cool stories. And then we were talking. He's like, dude, you got to have this guy, John Mangan, on your show. He's like the Forrest Gump of Air Force Rescue.
Yeah,
he's literally seen everything. So thanks for coming out.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, man. This is a little bit of a surreal experience for me. My first podcast. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So good buddy of mine taught me that everyone likes to get a gift, right?
Yeah, okay.
It kicks you off, gets you in a good mood, gets you ready to talk. Anyhow, this is my buddy Ron's company, Buffalo Wool Sock Company. So when you're out there in New Mexico elk hunting, your feet will be warm and comfortable. All American made, and this guy's just awesome. So I like to support him. So here's some Buffalo Wool socks.
Thanks. And I actually do need some stuff like this.
Yeah, they're epic. They're like genuinely the best socks.
So that's like actual real buffalo stuff.
Yeah, buffalo wool.
Okay.
Manufactured in America. So good stuff.
All right, thanks. And I appreciate that.
All right. So you had an interesting childhood, right? So your dad was an F4 pilot, Vietnam veteran.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about growing up and what led you to want to be a pilot in the first place.
Let's see. My dad, he was he raced hot rods in Long Beach, California, kind of in the late 50s. So kind of like the old Beach Boys era, Jan and Dean making their hot rods from scratch. And he was there in that whole kind of Gidget surf scene, hand making their boards out of balsa, then surfing, no wetsuits, up and down Southern California. And so just that classic Southern California Americana. And he ended up going to the Air Force Academy, class of 65. And coming out of there, he went into F4s. And he was actually in the back seat to start out. So back then they would start you out in the back seat and move you up to the front seat. So F4s in Germany, we'd hear stories, see all the pictures from him and my mom traveling all over Europe, just living that life. Looked amazing. And then he eventually went into O2 Bird Dogs after that, like as a forward air controller, as a FAC in Korea. So him and my mom were in Korea, and we hear all those stories, see all those pictures. And in Korea back in 1970 was a lot different.
Wow.
A lot different than it is today. He would say they had some target out in the water that they would go drop napalm on. And they would
Chickdo, probably the same place we hit.
Yeah, and they'd go out and they would drop napalm on these targets, and they would have to stop because all the Koreans would be getting in their boats and coming out into the water to scoop up the non-burned napalm, and they would use that to heat their houses.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, because they were just so it was so difficult there, just recovering from the war, not that much long ago, and so just all the crazy stories from there. And then after that, then he was B-52s in Vietnam. They're flying out of Guam, and so he was in the Linebacker 2, going up there and bombing Haiphong Harbor and Hanoi and all that. If you know the history of that, of just trying to end that war, and really, really intense, and just kind of interesting. Is as I've been doing some research on what he did, I found on YouTube somebody had recreated some of those bombing missions in near real time, like showing the maps, showing the location of every single bomber, every single aircraft in those strike packages, overlaid with the audio, of the radio calls, of hearing the SAM launches, hearing the emergency beacons go off when a B-52 gets shot down. There's all these guys in their chutes, and that was just electrifying and terrifying to know that my dad was one of those one of those little beacons, moving around on the graphic, then hearing what he heard. And that was really a profound experience. And because, he never talked about it. And so to finally get that taste of it was really, really pretty amazing. So we did that and got into the Guard up in Syracuse. Got out of active duty, flew the little OA 37s.
Oh, that's cool.
The tweets with guns there. And so grew up watching him. I remember getting to watch him take off and fly around. My mom was out with a Girl Scout troop one time, out in some Girl Scout camp. And so he comes in with his 37, he's flying around, puts on a whole air show for my mom and
Back
the girls.
when you could do that, get away with it.
Yeah, loops, rolls, the whole 9 yards. And my mom just came home and she was just over the moon, having her husband up there putting on an air show is, that's some cool points.
When did you come in the picture in this?
So I was born in 73, and then at that time, he actually was flying EC-47s, or very quickly after I was born, EC-47s in Nakhon Phanom, Thailand. And my mother, myself, and my brother, he took us there. And this is very, very remote airfield in eastern Thailand, right on Mekong River, overlooking Laos. And so my mom went there, and she was on a tourist visa, just living downtown. And they said, so they've got all the stories about what that was like, traveling around Thailand in the 70s. And they said they'd go out at night and they'd project movies up on a bed sheet or something like that on a wall. And they would watch the firefights taking place across the river over in Laos.
And they didn't really want your family there at that time, did they?
Well, it gets even more nuts. Yeah, so the families were not encouraged to be there. She was just there on a tourist visa, and so they're watching the firefights take place over in over in Laos at night. The tracers going back and forth, and then my mother had to have her tourist visa renewed every month by leaving the country. So she would take me and my brother, 2 little kids. I was under 1 year old. Get on a ferry and cross over to Laos, the war zone, and renew, and be out of the country, get her passport stamped, and come back. And I was just like,
dude, your mom is a trooper.
Yeah. It's like, that doesn't seem like that would pass the risk management protocol in today's Air Force.
That'd be like trying to get our wives to move to Pakistan.
Yes, exactly. It's like, hey, bring your wives to Pakistan. Just send them on over the border, get it stamped over there in Afghanistan. And they couldn't. And so I had assumed there'd be some sort of security. Like, hey, maybe once a month they get some security. They go over there. I actually got in touch with the guy who ran the security there at NKP. I just did some internet searches and found a society, this group of people. They all stay in touch. And he said, no, the wives went alone because an American serviceman could not go into Laos because of the politics. So they couldn't send a security detail. They were just packing up and doing it on their own. I mean, that is just gutsy. That was awesome. And that showed in how they raised us. I got a funny story about them turning us loose in New York City later on. But so that was how our parents raised us. Just go for it. Then let's see. Yeah, so upstate New York. My dad was in the Air Force for in the Guard, flying the tweets. He eventually got out. Went into airlines, stuff like that. And but I grew up around air shows, around aircraft. And I still just remember, 10 years old, something like that, in an air show at Griffiths Air Force Base, and those F-4s coming over right over the crowd, full burners on, pulling up. You can just smell the exhaust.
It's pure Americana.
Yeah, and that sound is just shaking your whole chest. It's like an otherworldly experience, and you just go, I have to do that. I want to make that much noise, and I want to go that fast. And
dude, air shows are such an effective recruiting tool.
Yeah.
Still to this day,
that is amazing.
It's incredible.
And to this day, when something goes past in full burner, there's just I can't even grasp that when they just pull up and they just disappear and in a heartbeat. and it's just over. Was like, is that even real? Did that just happen?
Yeah, you get to like think about being a super empowered individual. I mean, you strap on this machine.
Yeah, it's just not even. Yeah, I still can't even grasp it. 50 years later, it's just crazy.
Oh man, so you always wanted to be a pilot. I mean, your old man was a fighter pilot, and that was just what you wanted to do. And your brother, or was he? Was he kind of wanting to fly? Or?
No, he was. He didn't seem to grasp the. He never got the flying bug. And my sister, yes, I had 2 younger sisters as well. They didn't really get the flying bug, but one of my sisters did become a pilot.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so she went to the academy and she flew 135s and then Predators. MQ. What's the smaller one?
Oh, the MQ-1 and the MQ-9 is the Reaper, the bigger one.
Yeah. So she flew the little recon ones as well. But so she had an Air Force career. So a lot of military in our family. My uncle flew Sky Raiders actually when they were with the Navy.
Oh, cool.
So I think they weren't called the Sky Raider. A1 SPAD, I think. But yeah, so he flew for the Navy back in the 50s, and.
So you're just surrounded by these like badasses in your mind, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I had another uncle who was a Green Beret in Vietnam, and he was up with the Hmong Hill tribes, living with them, doing stuff. So a lot of military in our history. We can track stuff back to Civil War, company commander in the Union Army. We've even traced some people back, I think, to the Whiskey Rebellion. But they were on the whiskey side. They were.
I think my ancestors were on the other side of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Mississippi.
Yeah, wouldn't that be gnarly if we found out, our relatives were duking it out back in the day?
Fired cannons at point blank range.
Yeah. Well, we can have a good cup of coffee over it and laugh about it. 150 later.
So did you want to fly fighters at that time?
Growing up, yeah. I was into fighters. I still remember going into the movie theater and watching Top Gun. I was probably 13 years old maybe, and just, what that did to people.
Dude, I think Top Gun did more for the Air Force than it ever did for the Navy.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching Top Gun and my juvenile brain just thought fighter jets, Air Force. Exactly. I didn't even think about it.
What's that boat on there? I don't know what that is. It's an airplane.
I just want to fly these jets.
Yeah, and so that just solidified it. Just that whole atmosphere, that persona, and a lot of that, and eventually that cracked because my obsession with jet fighter pilot, the airplane itself and the lifestyle and the image was unhealthy. In the long term, it was the image. It wasn't the reality of it. It was the Hollywood image, and slowly that started to crack. And I realized I didn't want to do that. And eventually, I went into helicopters. But that was just a journey in itself, perhaps somewhat interesting. And but that's what gave me the energy to get into the Air Force Academy. So it gave me the direction, it gave me the vector, it kept me working, and it got me in the door. And once I was in the door, I realized that wasn't for me, and so it all worked out.
So you got to the Air Force Academy, where I assume you're a pretty good student, good at math and science.
I didn't apply myself, perhaps, as well as I could. Good grades, good scores. Good grades, good scores, but not good enough. And so I actually didn't get into the academy the first go. I had to go to New Mexico Military Institute down in Roswell. So I went down there after high school and was actually in Army ROTC.
It's like Lord of the Flies.
It was a very interesting place back there, 91, 92, and it was a blast. Very, very interesting characters at that school. And but it was some of the toughest military training I ever had. That Army ROTC unit there was phenomenal. We would go out and do these field training exercises, and they would push us pretty hard. It was great training. They would just turn us loose up in the mountains in New Mexico, and I got nothing but fond memories of that. And that was some of the best military training I ever had. And it seems sometimes where things are happening in my life and I don't really know why they are, or I think it's a setback. But the skills that I learned during those events actually become up, guiding my life or saving my life or something like that. And we did so much land nav in Army ROTC. On those weekends we were getting paper maps or running around out in those ranges and just land nav. And later on in 2002 in Afghanistan, I can't say for certain, but I think some of those skills saved my life. And so I thought that was a setback, not getting into the Air Force Academy. But then those skill sets that I had, learned at NIMI down there in Roswell, saved my life. And so a series of things have continually always happened like that. So whenever something bad happens, you're just being taught a lesson and just being prepared for something else.
So little thing for the audience, if you hear some crackling in the background, you got kind of cold in here, so we had to make a fire. And then I should have mentioned
makes it very homey.
Yeah, I mean it's cold out here today.
Yeah.
But another little thing I should have mentioned: if you tap the table, you'll have I'll get like 500 angry emails saying I'm trying to listen to this at work, and the tapping's driving me insane.
Okay.
So just a little
no more tapping
podcast pro tip. No, that's interesting. And then so you never gave up on your ultimate objective of getting to the academy. So you just reapplied after a year.
Oh yeah. So I was there on it's called the Falcon Foundation Scholarship, where they help pay for it, get you through, and if you get your grades up, then they let you into the academy. So did that, got into the academy and CS-15 for all 4 years. And while I was there, parachuting school, gliding school, SERE school, became a SERE instructor for the survival school there, and just absolutely loved it. That was just some of the best times of my life, running around out there in the woods. And so that was great. But while I was there, I started to realize that the fighter pilot life might not as fun as it looked. It wasn't just wasn't in my heart. And the concept of going out there and saving lives was really starting to felt more like a purpose. And some other things that guided that was I got 3 F-16 rides, incentive rides. And I remember on that first ride going up, and I thought, all right, danger zone, baby, let's go. I want to see it. Let's see this. Of course, we go up, and I think there was like 8 aircraft up there. I think you make a 4v4. I don't think I ever saw a single aircraft. I remember just looking off, and where is everybody? This isn't like the movies. And so that's just started breaking some of the Hollywood image that I had cultivated. And then I got a Black Hawk ride with the Tucson Reserve Unit, and that felt like flying. Just sitting there in the door, your legs hanging out, wind in your face, and just tearing around up there in those Tucson, Arizona mountains, down these valleys into these gullies, and being able to smell the pine trees as you're going through there. Just something clicked. And that felt like flying. That felt like the freedom I'd always wanted. And so that just planted the seed that flying Black Hawks is really awesome. And so that thrill of flying, and then developing the purpose of it doesn't matter what the politics is. It doesn't matter who you're saving. It just had this feeling that it was right. And that was something that I could dedicate my life to and take risks for, and there's no question that what you're doing is the right thing.
So you were 100% in on helicopters from when you started pilot training?
It was still right down to the moment that I picked that helicopter, there was still a part of me going, dude, You know, because there's a 38 up there. There was one 38 that was left to be picked, and I was like, "Oh my God, I could do that!" You know, because you know how beautiful those fight. I just,
oh yeah,
they still drive me crazy. You know, 53 years old here, and just to step away from that was difficult. But yeah, went helicopters, and it all worked out.
Dude, I was always so happy when there was a really good pilot that wanted to fly helicopters in my pilot training class. Because, you know, there's like 4 slots out of 35 or whatever it is. You're like, oh, good, that guy's off the board.
Nice. Well, you only had 4 T-38s?
No, I think we had 6, but a couple were guard or something.
Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, but you know, it sounds like you could have gone any path you wanted.
There was at least one of everything. There was like one T-38, one C-130, and one helicopter, and so I had the full spread of choice. And I remember that moment very, very distinctly because you know that's such a critical crossroads in your life of where your life is going to go and who you're going to meet and just everything. And so, yeah, very, very distinct moment when I went, I'll take, you know, what's it going to be?
Gotta make the call.
What's going to come out of your mouth? And yes, I went for the helicopter and, yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah. And for the non, you know, Air Force pilots out there, the way it works is when you about halfway done with pilot training, everything you do is graded. And then the class is like racked and stacked. And then the number one guy gets to decide where he wants to go and then on down the line. And there's a certain amount for future fighter bomber pilots, cargo pilots, and helicopter pilots. So that's what we're talking about when you're like halfway through and you got to either you have the ability to make that decision or they just make it for you.
Yeah. Well, they put that on YouTube now.
Yeah,
they film those track selects and the when you get your airframe, and I don't know if I'd want that broadcast.
Literally one of the best days of my life.
Yeah,
just that when you find out where you're going.
Yeah,
it's total elation.
Yeah, and so somewhat funny was so going through Rucker. Now it was when picking your final assignment. I wanted Iceland. We had a rescue unit there in Iceland. I just wanted to get out of the States and see something different. And Iceland is about as different as can get. And so Iceland didn't come up. If an assignment to Iceland was available, I wouldn't have got it because everybody would have wanted to go check that out. And so some guys ahead of me would have taken Iceland. But the assignment was actually to Alamogordo, New Mexico. And nobody wanted to go to Alamogordo.
God's country.
Yeah. Somebody's country.
Not really, right?
Might be new, but it's still Mexico. And so it would have gone in a heartbeat, and I never would have got it. And so the Iceland assignment. And so Alamogordo comes up, and so that's left over, and I take it. And so a little bit of time passes, and you're supposed to get a welcome package from your unit that said, "Hey, welcome to go. Here's some patches. Here's where you can live. Blah blah blah." Well, no welcome package is arriving, and so I call them up on the phone. And go, "Hey, I'm supposed to be showing up here in a few weeks. Can I get a little info?" The guy goes, "Hey, man, we're closing up shop here. There's we don't know why you got assigned here. We're literally unpacking and closing up shop. We're done." And so I called up the assignments guy and I'm like, "What do you got?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess you shouldn't have got that assignment."
Whoops.
Whoops. So where do you want to go? So the assignments guy literally asked me, pick any assignment. Where do you want to go?
That's like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah,
never happens.
And
usually.
I just keep stumbling into these. I don't know why. So I go, "I want Iceland." He goes, 1 or 2 years. I go, 2 years. So so I got Iceland for my first assignment, and that was just amazing. How do you describe it? I mean, it's just Iceland is one of the most remote, barren, beautiful, harsh, gorgeous places on Earth. And, that's why the tourists are going there, because it's just incredible. And I got to fly a Pave Hawk around that for almost 3 years.
What year is this now? Is this pre 9/11 still?
Yes. Yeah. So arrived there in 98. So I was there from 98 to 2001 and just got to fly all over the country. And I just remember there were some nights we would be up there flying over the glaciers and the northern lights are going off. And, on night vision goggles, those northern lights are amplified 1,000 times. And so you can see all these different structures and patterns that are visible in the lights that your naked eye never sees. And it seems like sometimes they were so intense that you could kind of hear the intercom systems crackling with a little bit of static from that electricity coming through. And then just looking out across that wasteland with the glaciers and no sign of any human beings for as far as the eye can see. And then we would land on top of some mountain and just take a little break.
Just amazing opportunity.
Yeah. And just, we went to all the highest mountains and signed all the,
Been there, done that.
Yeah, signed all the things on the top of the mountains. So Iceland was just amazing. I mean, and the skill set that I learned there, which once again seemed to save my life later, was taking off and landing in the absolute worst conditions possible. We didn't have very good military training ranges. They were just kind of flying ranges. But we didn't have any adversaries, didn't have any, threat systems to play against, and no other aircraft or ground teams to play with. So we just flew and landed and took off and hovered and hoisted, in the snow, in the dust, in the dark, in 40, 50 knot winds, just learned that aircraft inside and out. And then when, years later in Afghanistan, those were the skills that saved us. So
just build this like rock solid foundation in the basics.
Yeah. And just sitting there
conditions.
And just absolute whiteout. And all you can see is like one little pebble. Okay, I still got a pebble out there. I'm going to hover off this pebble, and just then the pebble starts rolling. And Jim, am I chasing a rolling pebble, or is that blowing away? But so those skill sets came in invaluable later on.
So where were you on 9/11?
I was at home sleeping, and my buddy Brent Boyu called me up, woke me up, and said, "Hey, dude, turn on your, because I'd been on a night shift, I think, the night before, and so he just, turn on the TV." And so, the world changed then. And I think to try and the psychological shock of that for the society and also for the military and Air Force rescue, we hadn't done a combat rescue since like 1970, maybe the USS Mayugas incident where all those soldiers got kidnapped, and Koh Tang Island, I think that was 75. And that was the last time that anybody in Air Force rescue had done a combat mission. When they picked up the Yugoslavia rescues, when there was a stealth fighter shot down an F-16, that was 99, but that was Air Force Special Ops, and we hadn't gone to war since then. We didn't participate in the 91 Gulf War. And then suddenly, boom, that happens, and we're going to be actually thrown into combat. And so it was our culture had been non-combat for almost 20 years. Nobody had done anything. Actually, maybe 25? Yeah, 25, 26 years. And there was nobody in the community that had done a combat rescue. And that changes everything. And just how you look at everything, how you train, how you prepare, the mindsets. It's kind of like a philosophical concept that you've heard about. Mm-hmm. But has anybody done it? No, nobody had ever done it. So that was a huge shock for our military culture.
What was your mindset at the time? Were you just like dying to get in the fight? Like, was everybody trying to figure out how to maneuver to deploy?
Absolutely. Everybody. And there was something, there was also a concept of when we looked back at all the combat ops, I would say going back to like Grenada, Grenada, over in a few days. Then they went into Panama, 89. There was some action in Panama. And once again, over in a few days. And then the Gulf War in 91, almost a full month of combat ops, but then it was over. And then there was a little bit of the Desert Fox bombing missions, where like the B-1s went and bombed Iraq. And once again, those are over in a few hours. And then 99 Allied force in Yugoslavia. Once again, that was over in just a few days. They had a full month, right? And I believe that in Yugoslavia. And so all of these combat ops that America had been involved in over 25 years were over and done within a few days. And so if you weren't there right when it started, it was all going to be over and done with. And then throw in the fact that Air Force Rescue hadn't really been involved with any of those. There was very much a feeling of we're never going to get to do anything. And I remember just before 9/11, I was talking with a buddy of mine, and when you're doing a mission, you're flying into enemy airspace, you hit the IP, you circle up, you're getting all your ducks in a row before you go in, and then when everybody's ready to finally push into the terminal area, the code word is execute, execute, execute. And my buddy was like, "Man, do you think you'll ever get to hear that? Will you ever hear execute, execute, execute?" And we're like, "No, I don't know. I'll probably go my whole career." Just like the guys before us. We were seeing guys that retired after 20, 25-year careers, and they'd never seen a mission. And it was looking like that was going to be it for us. It was the end of history. Peace had broken out all around the world. And then I remember that moment very specifically on that conversation. And then years later, I think it was 2009, and we were running like 3 to 5 missions every day for months. And I remembered my aircraft broke, and the spare was broke, and I went inside and had a chance to grab a little nap on a cot. And I heard my wingman. They gave him an Apache, and he went off and he did a mission. And as I heard him come back, and then I heard him go into the fuel pits. Then I heard him head back out. And I was like, "Oh, that poor sucker having to do another mission." And I thought back to that moment, 8 years earlier, and I had just been wondering if I would ever get one. And then the world changes and got so many that was just, begging for a break. And you never know where life's going to take you and what's going to happen and where you're going to end up. And but that was a good burden to bear.
Yeah,
definitely glad I got a chance to do that.
So your book, which I should have mentioned earlier, is pretty incredible, and it opens with your flying in Operation Anaconda.
Yeah.
And so, how did you maneuver yourself into the fight?
Ooh, okay. Well, to tell that story, if I could just speak for just a second about this. So after my career was finished and I started thinking back on all the missions, and I realized that the Air Force had prepared me to be kind of like a technician, how to operate my equipment, how to operate my systems, and what to physically do in combat. But I was not, as my story will soon show, I was not mentally prepared. And I looked at the failings and where I screwed up, or where my where my team screwed up, and I started to see these common themes of how it was all due to mental stress. And so I eventually just looked into sports psychology, started digging into it, and the sports psychologists figured this out decades ago for people playing basketball and football, and just how does the brain work under stress. And so I just took all those principles and put it into aviation speak, and just how to live your life with some of those lessons, and how to control your anxiety, your stress, and then how to train yourself so you can excel when you're terrified. And so as I'm telling some of the stuff about Anaconda, I'll be pointing out where I screwed up and what I should have done if I'd had the proper training. So if you hear me break away from the story and start babbling, that's what I'm doing.
No, it's so interesting. And because anyone who's been through these high stress situations understands what you're writing about.
Yeah.
Like, and because you've lived through it, maybe worked through it and figured it out in a certain way. But the way you break it down is, it's like more of a scientific approach to what took us like decades to learn. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, and all the information is out there. All the science is done, and just for whatever reason, we really haven't brought those techniques and those worldviews and those training systems over to the military. And the guys playing sports have figured it out. So, So anyway, so Anaconda, let's see. So September 11th, and as everybody knows, I think within a month or actually a few weeks, forces were starting to arrive over there in Afghanistan. And the first push from Special Ops was over there by November, I believe. November, December, things were going on. And Air Force Rescue started going over there as well and set up in Pakistan. For starters, for Pakistan, then eventually they moved in up near Bagram, I believe. But not much happened. By the time they arrived, the Green Berets, the Special Ops, and their Afghan allies had really pushed the Taliban back, and we didn't have much to do. And so it looked like the old pattern was happening, where lots of action in those first few days and weeks, then it dies off and it's done. I wasn't on that push. My mother had passed away, and so of course that was horrific. But that led to me actually being in the action, and so right off the bat I was obviously very conflicted. But hey, I don't get to be a part of this. But I'm dealing with the death of my mother, who was probably the best human being I ever had the chance to know. So that was a horrible experience. And so I ended up in late January, I believe, shipped over there. And so we thought we were going now to just sit and do nothing. And so we got over there, we arrived in Pakistan, and we were there just in Pakistan for a few days. And then they told us they wanted us to set up a rescue det in Kandahar. So we flew into Kandahar, and that was an adventure, amazing adventure, flying Black Hawks through those mountains, through the Hindu Kush, going up through Pakistan, through the Red Desert, and arriving there in Kandahar, and that was just the Wild West, just littered with all the old Russian equipment, MiG-15s, MiG-17s, MiG-21s, all the helicopters, weapons, ammunition, rockets, just lying around. It was awesome.
In retrospect, maybe we should have looked at that and thought about it.
Yeah, and we set up our camp right in the middle of the helicopter graveyard. Like people were literally building structures out of the crashed helicopters, getting the clamshells and the rocket launchers and making furniture out of the, like blades and stuff like that. And
There's
so,
like a flashing warning in our face. Come on.
It was wild. So we set up there, and very exciting, but nothing even approaching combat. There's just nothing happening. And so we were there from late January, and then all of February, once again, nothing happening. And then towards the end of February, we're going to set up a det up in Uzbekistan. We tried to do a cross-country flight up there. We went through up the Bamyan Valley, got caught by a snowstorm. My flight lead crashed on the side of a mountain. We got caught in this box canyon, and I got to witness a miracle. But if you could imagine a 60 to 70 degree mountain face like this, and he was turning, couldn't make it. He was trying to turn around. And as he went to hit this cliff face, he just pulled nose up, pulled the guts out of his engine, applied the last of his power. Pretty much, as a helicopter stalls, runs out of power, droops the rotor, and he slapped it down. And there was a stair step in the cliff face that was the size of a Black Hawk. And hit, just boom, landed right on the side of this cliff. The tips of his blades just kissed the rocks right in front of him, literally just scratched the paint, and that was it. And they were on the ground. And that's a long story, but they were able to dump fuel, dump cargo, back off the cliff, backed off of it, fell backwards, did a 180, a 180 shimmy shack, and then flew out of it. And we flew out of there, and it got worse from there. But yeah, so that was scary. And I'll just skip that because I'll talk forever. We just get to Anaconda. So we came back to Kandahar, and I think within a week or two, we started hearing information that the Army had, a big operation going on called Anaconda. It was going to be like, 1,500 people, and they were going to be mopping up the last of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda holdouts that were in town, in the country, and we were not going to have any part in it. So we asked, hey, do you want us to pre-position forward? We got rescue, we got PJs, we can bring some medical, to this fight. They said, nope, sorry, we got it. It's not a big deal. And as you know, it turned into a big deal. And so basically they thought that there was a few hundred, like maybe 200 people in this little town. And so the idea was they're going to do a big air assault. Flight of the Valkyries is playing. 10th Mountain swoops in on their 47s and sets up encircles the enemy in the town. They got blocking forces. There's nowhere to escape through, hammer and anvil, and they'll be done with them in like 2 or 3 days. And so it turned out, so they did their big air assault, surrounded the village, and it turned out there wasn't 200 fighters in the village. There was like 800 or 900. I can't remember the numbers now, 1,000 in the mountains surrounding the village. So they had just helicoptered themselves into the center of the cauldron and were now being fired on from 3 directions, from entrenched positions, with ammo dumps, mortar pits, heavy machine guns, RPGs, and basically infinite ammo. They'd been stocking ammo up there since the Soviets, and so it was real, instantly was bad. Let's see. There were 3 Apaches that were supporting these guys. One Apache got hit with an RPG up in the nose, in the sensor package, blew that off the helicopter. Other one got hit in the weapons pylon, blew that that off, and then the other one was shot up so bad it had to limp home. But 3 Apaches taken out of the fight while they're flying. And so this came in later, when we were proposing landing in the middle of this, and doing a rescue in the middle of this. And I was like, those Apaches got shot up while they were flying, and we want to land.
What kind of casualties were mounting up there?
I believe it was a unit from the 10th Mountain, and there was like 80 Americans that were trapped there. So 80 dudes. I think there was 30 that needed to be medevaced. So maybe it was 26, but it was a casualty rate of like 30% within hours. And I mean, just think about the firepower it takes to pin down 80 American soldiers who have Apache support. I mean, that's a staggering amount of firepower. And so we're getting this information that these guys are pinned down, they're taking casualties, all their air support is gone, and AC-130s can't come out in the daytime. And so it's really, really dire. And we were down in Kandahar about it was about an hour flight away, hour and a half flight, I believe it was, to get there. And there was one Apache there at Kandahar. And the Army wanted that Apache to get into the fight. And so they said, hey, we'll take, our call sign was Gecko. We'll take the 2 Geckos and we'll escort that Apache forward to the battle area. And so there was a little FARP called FARP Texaco. The Geckos will escort the Apache there. The Apache refuels, and then it will press on. And so that's what we did. So we launched, and it's hard to describe that level of excitement. Like, oh my God, there's something real happening. This isn't a training mission. And so we launched. We flew with that Apache to Texaco. We landed, and then the Apache refueled, and it just disappeared over the ridgeline and went to get in the fight. And so now we were going to sit and wait to do a rescue once it got dark. So we were sitting on the ground there at Texaco. It's just a dirt strip that the Russians had bulldozed. 2 decades prior, there was still a bunch of Russian equipment lying around, and they brought in a 47 Fat Cow. So we land there, we refuel, and we sit. We just start collecting information, getting coordinates for the LZs, and it's 8,500 feet, which is, we're barely going to have power to get in there. Our Pave Hawks were very, very heavy with the armor, the weapons, all the gear. We're barely going to have the power to get in there and get out again. And so we make the plan, and now we're waiting for nightfall. And so this is the first lesson I learned, is that one of the most dangerous moments before combat is when you have a pause, when nothing is happening. That is the most dangerous moment, where you're setting yourself up for failure in that empty silence. When you're busy, your mind is focused on procedures. Get this done, get that done, get that. Okay, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that. And once that's all done and you have to wait, I screwed up. I didn't know what to do. And so I started thinking, and I start contemplating what I was just talking about on how bad that situation was. Oh my God, 3 Apaches, they weren't shot down and crashed, but they had to leave. Shot up and had to leave. 30% casualty rate. Can I even land at that altitude? I don't know. And so I started stacking up the danger and what can go wrong. My focus wasn't on the procedures that would allow me to win. My focus was on the consequences of the danger. And so when that focus shifts, now that starts feeding on itself. Okay, well, oh my God, this is probably a good chance we're going to die. Okay, so what if I die? And so now I started thinking about my family back home. And you start going, oh my God, what time is it now? Back home, my aunt, they're just getting up. They're just getting up. My dad's just probably getting up, my sisters. And I started visualizing what would happen if I got killed. And so I actually visualized because my dad had just lost my mom, the love of his life. And I started thinking, what's it going to do to him if he loses his son? And so you visualize, people knocking at his door and what that's going to do to him. And then he has to call my sisters, my brother. And I visualized him saying, John's been killed, and what that would do to him. And you just start spinning down into this pit, and you're not thinking about what you need to do. It's like the fear, it's like a snake slithering into a tent, and it just wraps itself around you and just starts to squeeze. And so I had already psyched myself out, and the fear was already growing. And so the technique to counter that is called controlled drift of focus. That when your focus drifts away from the mission, because you've got empty time, you've got forbidden areas that you do not think about. and you've got approved areas that you do think about. And so recognize if you're in one of those moments, don't think about anything vivid and emotional, like back home. Oh, the family vacation, the family, your children, spouses. Oh, I never told so-and-so I loved them. Whatever. You just stay away from that. Do not go there. That is dangerous territory. Think about something else, like building your dream home. Nail by nail, board by board, or restoring a car, or start building a novel in your head and just develop those characters, develop those themes. Have some sort of mental structure that you can fall back on and pass time that won't take you into those danger areas. Because once you let that fear snake in the door, it doesn't go away and it just goes downhill. So I had let that fear snake in the door and it just got worse from there. So nighttime comes and we get the call, a little bit after full dark, hey, go in and go. And so we fire up the birds, we take off, and we're flying towards the objective. It's about a 15-minute flight to get there. And it's just absolutely the worst case scenario is developing as we're going. And it was, like from Spaceballs, ludicrous speed. It was ludicrous scenario. It was like this. It was like a cartoon caricature of bad. As we're flying in, they start telling us, hey, B-52 strikes are occurring at Marzak. Do not approach from the north. And so now, Marzak, where the hell is Marzak? Okay, B-52, oh, gee, what are they dropping? Okay, how much do we have to avoid that by? And so we're trying to solve that problem. And B-52 strikes, what requires a B-52 strike that we're about to fly into? And okay, so to give you an idea of the scale we're flying in of what's happening is our typical scenario has say an F-16 pilot bails out behind enemy lines and he's hiding in the bushes. And we're going to fly in, enemy doesn't know he's there, and we're going to go pick up one guy and oh no, here comes a pickup truck with a squad of guys in the back. Oh, okay, I'll set up my gunnery pattern. I'll scare them away with my minigun, and then we'll fly away. And that's about the extent of our scenarios. And so so now these scenarios has B-52 strikes taking place right next to where we're going. So don't approach from the north. And before we can even begin solving that problem, they're saying don't approach from the east or the south. Enemy positions within 250 meters, AC-130 is striking, right outside the perimeter. And so we've got guys within rifle range, mortars, RPGs, heavy machine guns, bunkers, and an AC-130 hammering away on them, danger close. And it's like, what?
Just explosion in your mind.
Never trained with a B-52. Never trained with an AC-130 overhead. Never trained with fixed enemy positions. Never trained with an Army unit. It was always just a single Air Force pilot waiting on the ground. I've never flown into an active battle going on. And then before we can even begin solving that, do not approach from the west. Razor flight. There were these, the Special Ops 47s are operating just to the west of our objective. And so, so now we've got other aircraft in the area. What's their frequencies? What's their flight route? What altitude are they at? Do they know we're coming? How do we contact them? And so each one of these problems is any one of those problems had occurred, back in a training scenario, it'd be, knock it off. Oh my God, we can't do this. We got to go plan for a couple months. And they're just piling on top of each other before we can even begin addressing one. The next problem has occurred. And so none of these problems are even solved or really even addressed by the time we arrived just outside the objective area. And so as that's happening, the fear is just billow. It's like setting off a smoke bomb, you know, in a room. It's just billowing up, and that fear starts shutting you down. And that's one of the big lessons there, is that fear shuts down your forebrain. And the forebrain is what we're doing right now. Talking, thinking, remembering the past, anticipating the future, and solving problems. And so as you get progressively more and more scared, your ability to solve problems decays. And so now the situation is worse because you're not solving the problems. And so the fear gets even bigger. And so it's this doom loop spiral that just gets worse and worse. And so if it's just so hard to describe what that is like if you've never experienced it. And you just feel like your humanity is being taken away from you. Or if you could imagine just things aren't working right. You know, imagine an engine that's been run too hard, it's got no oil, and they threw a bunch of sand, you know, in the gearbox, and it's just clunking over and not functioning in these basic things that you know how to do, but you're not doing them. And you're falling behind and you're failing. And so it's just this horrible, horrible feeling.
I remember the feeling of just going tunnel vision.
It's physical. I get that really bad. I get real bad tunnel vision where I physically don't see things off to the side, and I get tunnel focus. You know, you get auditory exclusion.
You stop, hearing any radio calls.
You don't hear. Did he just say that? You know, and no, I didn't hear that. And then some guys, oh yeah, something happened over here. Didn't see it. I mean, so very, very intense physical blindness, you know, off of what's directly in front of you. And okay, so we're holding up short of the just maybe 2-3 miles, I think, northeast of the what became Hell's Half Pipe. And flight lead goes in because there's so many unknowns. The area is so tight. There's so much shooting. He doesn't want 2 aircraft stumbling around the middle of that. So flight lead goes in, and we're just waiting. Just, we can just see some flashes right over this little ridge line, and we're just stewing, just wondering what's going on. Are we ever going to see from him again, hear from him again? It was really, really intense. Then we get a radio call, and he just goes, all right, I'm on the ground, come on in. And all right, let's go. So we start heading in. I just remember watching that nav system tick down, like 2.0, 1.9.
It's like distance to the objective. Yeah,
just ticking down, and you can just see these flashes up ahead and tracer fire going back and forth. The AC-130 was holding fire as we were heading on in, and we can see a little glowing ball, and that's the IR light that was on my flight lead, on his aircraft, and he's down in the LZ. So all we can see, though, is that glowing ball. It's extremely dark. And my aircraft commander, Phil, we're closing in, and he says, on the approach. So now we're starting the approach, and just once again, that fear is just hammering in you with that fire going back and forth, and you're going into the middle of it and going to stop. And I had this sensation that I could collapse my entire body in behind my my armored chest plate. And it's like an origami, if I just do this, I can get everything. Oh, yeah, look at that. And you're not doing anything, but it's some kind of psychological thing, and you feel like you're peering out from behind it. And we're on the approach, and we're looking, trying to figure out what's going on. And so, can people see my hands here? This is what we think is going on. We think my my flight lead is right here, and we're going to come and we're going to land like this behind him. And so we're doing that. We're shooting the approach. And what you also have to understand is on helicopter dynamics, as you get slower and slower, it requires more and more power to stay in the air because the downwash from the rotor system starts to catch you. And so you start generating your own downdraft. And so it's like running up an escalator. It's like a down escalator, and you're trying to run up it. And so as you go slower and slower, that escalator is going faster and faster. And so once you hit a certain critical point, you can't stay in the air anymore, and the escalator wins, and you're going to slam down into the ground. And so as we're coming in and slowing down, we see that flight lead is actually 180 degrees off of what we had thought. He's pointed directly at us, and the area that we were pointed to is just a boulder field with a huge, huge slope. And if we just hit that, we're just going to tumble and roll. There's no way to land there. And there's nowhere to go. And so we're just running out of our last bit of airspeed. The aircraft is shuddering as that downdraft envelops us, and there's nothing. Like we're coming down. And just off down to my left, I can see a smoother area where the boulders weren't really that big, and it like kind of like a good place to crash. And Phil over on the right side, he's flying and he can't see it because I can barely see it down here. And so Phil on the opposite side of the aircraft definitely can't see it. And he's got nowhere to go, and we're just starting to fall. And I go, okay, let's just crash there. And so I just took the controls, and I yelled at Phil, I go, hey man, Co's got controls. And I just kind of guided us down to the left toward that smooth spot, for a good crash site. And everybody's yelling. The warning horns are going off. The low rotor, the engines are redlined. It's just an absolute, it's just the worst case scenario developing. So we came on down, sliding to the left, and just before we hit, I just pulled in all the power it could get from the rotors, and the aircraft just settled down and just about kissed the ground. I don't know, foot, two. I mean, it looked like we were touching the ground. I never felt anything, but just bottomed out right there, deep in ground effect. And then it stabilized. And we, so deep in that ground effect, rotor's more efficient. We didn't hit, and we just slowly started to come back up again, and we didn't hit. And it was just this elation, like, oh my God, we didn't crash. And just then this Dishka gunner who was up above us about 200 meters away, just lights us up with this 50 cal, 12.7 millimeter, and just starts hammering right down on us. And the tracers coming down and hitting just in front of the aircraft, and then kind of splitting and ricocheting, like splitting the aircraft with the ricochets. And there was the most absurd series of emotional,
holy shit, man,
reactions that just, and they're absurd, and they're so fast that it's stunning. And the first one was, that looks just like Star Wars. When those TIE fighters are coming at you, shooting. And the first part is, that looks just like Star Wars. And the second one was, does that guy know there's people down here? If he keeps that up, someone's going to get hurt. Because I'd never, experienced someone trying to kill you. And so it's just not part of your mental paradigms that he is, in fact, trying to kill you. And so the next one was like, that guy needs to cease fire before someone gets hurt.
Dude, the tracers under nods are so vivid.
Yes. And then the next one was, oh my God, he is trying to kill us. And then at that point, to describe what happens to your the forebrain, the conscious forebrain, imagine a flock of birds just going, just flying away. And that's the last bit of your decision-making, your conscious self just vanishes. So I didn't make any decisions at this point. It was just my body doing things. It's that midbrain taking over that animal, the lizard, whatever you want to call it, the lizard brain. And so what happened was, I wouldn't say I did, it just happened, was, pulled in max power and then climbed up on top of the ridge towards my flight lead. We're now nose to nose. And they did this big kind of fast and furious Tokyo drift slide all the way around to the back side of where he was. But there was all these people that were trying to load his helicopter. And we just slid right on through the middle of that. And my left gunner was screaming, stop left, stop left. And my mouth was screaming, I'm sliding left, I'm sliding left. It wasn't me. It was just the lizard in an absolute panic. And we knocked some guys over with the rotor wash. Nobody got hurt, but slid all the way around and then landed back behind flight lead. And I say I didn't make that decision. Well, why did I do it? Because that's what I always do. That's where I always put my helicopter behind flight lead. Shooting hundreds or thousands of approaches, you always put your aircraft behind flight lead. And so that was the habit that was that was embedded in my midbrain through repetition. And so when that forebrain goes away due to fear, all of your behavior is now governed by the midbrain. And what's in the midbrain? What you did before, over and over and over and over. And so that's what my body did.
It's like that saying, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training.
Yeah. That was Greek mercenary Archelaus in like 500 BC. And he saw it. He goes, yeah, doesn't matter, what you think you're going to do. Doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to know how you will behave in combat, look what you did in training over and over and over. And that's your midbrain. So fear rises, forebrain goes away, midbrain behavior dominates. And so that's how you have to guide your training. Go, what do I want to do in combat? Well, I'm going to do it now, over and over and over and over. And that's what you'll do. Another great quote from, you ever heard of the Book of Five Rings? Mm-hmm. That Musashi, the Japanese swordsman, and he said the exact same thing. In combat, you will only do what you did in training. And so, that's what happens. So that slide around happens, re-landed back there, and then we were now in a good position to load people. And
did you break contact with the Dishka with that maneuver?
Yes. So right when that was happening, when that guy was hammering down on us and my brain exploded in that flock of birds, then the AC-130 hit him with the IR illuminator. And I heard, I heard burn. That's just, that's burned into my memory is that word burn, and seeing that IR illuminator, and the Dishka immediately stopped. So those guys had nods. They could see the IR laser. They knew they were being highlighted. So he had stopped shooting. But we slide around to the other side, and now the scene of everybody running towards the helicopters, it looked like Apocalypse Now or one of those old movies. Guys being dragged, people covered in bandages. Our PJs ran out. One of them was shooting up towards the top of the ridge line, and some guy tried to jump on the helicopter that wasn't wounded. Some guy had dropped his rifle, and so there was a little bit. I didn't see that, but heard about it, and some other places. There was a little bit of a struggle trying to get that guy off the fucking helicopter. And the next night, our other crew came in. They actually had a stowaway. Somebody had jumped on
no joke, huh?
That wasn't supposed to be there. And so people were trying to get out of there. Guys getting hit as they were being pulled towards the helicopter. And so this next lesson that I had. So as I was sitting there, every time I looked over there and saw what was happening, I could feel that animal coming out again. I could feel that consciousness just taking flight. and that fear rising and my ability to do things starting to slip away. And so I would just come back inside the cockpit and I would do something. And this is called, and so I call this in my book, I call it an anchor. It's something which is in your midbrain, a cockpit task, or just something you're familiar with and you don't have to really think about. Just do it. And it pulls your attention away from that, from the scary stuff, from whatever's stressing you, and just gets you working on something you can do. And it anchors you. It holds you in place. And I could feel it. Every time I looked outside, could feel it slipping away. Come back inside, work on something, and I became present again. And and I literally, after like 2 cycles of that, I go, don't look outside. Don't look outside. Don't look outside. Don't look outside. And I just kept doing things in the cockpit, even if they weren't really. I was running power numbers. How many guys can we pick up? How much power are we going to have for the takeoff, etc. Just do it again. I already did it once. Do it twice. Do it 3 times, because at least it keeps your brain present and pushes back against that fear. So that's one of those things that it's called an anchor. And so yeah, it worked. So so flight lead, he had his stuff loaded, and he's like, "I'm out of here, suckers." So he's not gonna sit there, in the shooting gallery, and just wait for us. So as soon as he was loaded up, he took off, got out of the shooting gallery, and waited for us. And then once we had everybody loaded and packed in, just one funny story was one of our PJs was a very enthusiastic fighter. He had been a ranger before. He'd come over from the Army, and this was his life. This was his dream. And his name was Oswald. And so he's outside the aircraft, and he's been loading people up. And so he gets on and he goes, request permission to stay behind and treat the wounded. And so,
what a stud, man.
Yeah. He wanted to stay. There was other people fighting to get out of there. He's like, oh, this is my moment. And he wanted to stay. And so we call up to flight lead and go, hey, man, one of our PJs requests permission to stay behind. And flight lead goes, tell Oswald to get back on the damn helicopter.
He knew who it was.
He knew exactly who it was. Yeah, so a little bit of humor in the midst of all that was when my flight lead knew exactly who was trying to stay behind. But so we loaded them all up and took off. Just scraped over the rocks. We were just loaded up to the absolute maximum. And then took off and flew back to Bagram, and the Jays were in the back. If you could imagine, the back was just filled with people, and the Jays, they got all their gear, and so they're just crouched over, and they're still trying to keep these guys alive. For this, it was about a 45-minute flight, and just worked on them. You can imagine being in the middle of a helicopter filled with terribly wounded people at night. It's probably negative, I don't know. It's well below freezing back there, and just, trying to bandage people and keep them alive. And in the darkness, work on this guy, work on that guy, work on that guy. I mean, just the job they do back there is just amazing, the PJs.
How many men did you save that night?
I believe we got 9 out. I think we got 9. And so that was the 9 most critical. And in addition, so when we got back, we got back to Bagram, unloaded them, and they were having us stand by to see if we would go in again. And there was this oscillation, this emotional, let's go, let's kick ass, we just did it, I want some more. And like 5 seconds later, oh no, man, there's no way we can do that twice. And then 5 seconds later, let's go. So this crazy little emotional carousel. But I guess since we'd proven that you could get in and out of there, I think they got some 47s in. They said, all right, send in a 47, start pulling more people out. So so after that, we just flew home, and that adrenaline, coming down off of that, just, fighting to stay awake for another, almost a 3-hour flight back, low level. That was tough. But yeah, it came back, landed. That was that. And the next night, our sister flight went out. They had a crazy story about the stuff they did. Yeah, great job there. And then the next night was the Roberts Ridge incident where, 2 of those Razor 47s were shot down, 2 Medals of Honor, John Chapman, Neil Roberts, and all those, that incident. So we got called up on that, and we were on scene. We didn't do much, but we saw it, and there was some, some really amazing stuff I saw there. But so we can go into that if you want.
Something interesting we talked about at dinner last night was, some of the controversy that's unfolded since then. And you were talking about the unreliability of memory in these stressful environments, and how everyone's kind of fighting their own war with a different perspective, and how that can, genuinely fail people over time.
Yeah. And so I've seen arguments going on, in the Twitter sphere, the online, where guys are accusing people of, you did this or you did that, or you didn't do this, or that's not how it happened. And I would just encourage people, have some grace for these warriors when they're out there in these situations. The human mind is not designed for that level of stress. Very well documented in that book On Killing. If you ever read On Killing, what happens to your perception and what happens to your memory immediately and over time is just absolutely incredible. And then throw in the physical tunnel vision that we were just talking about, or the auditory exclusion, where you don't see things that happened immediately in front of you. You don't hear things that somebody said immediately in front of you. Or somebody says something and it suggests, and your body creates a memory of what happened. I'll come back to what you were getting at there, but to give you an example of what happened to me once, years later, over 200 missions, the stress was getting pretty intense. My body was I was getting some severe nausea when I would go to the aircraft to launch. Because my body, it's like, dude, you got to stop. You got to take a break. But went on this one mission, and we thought we were going. There was a mass casualty with some Marines. This is in Helmand. This is in 2009. We flew down there, and we thought we were going to pick up survivors. A troop transport truck had been hit, and we thought we were going down to pick up the survivors. And we landed. It was nighttime. I could see the vehicle out in front of us, and could see it was just like a tin can had just been ripped open. And we realized there was no rush. There was nobody coming toward the helicopter. There was no stretchers being brought. And we could just see people with flashlights moving around in the field downstream of the blast direction. And we realized there weren't any survivors, and they were just picking things up. And my memory stops at that point. And it was only years later, when I was going through a program, that I realized those memories were missing. When I was trying to develop the mission. I have no further memory of that night, of being on the ground. I don't remember. No need to talk about it. You can imagine. I went and talked to my buddies about, hey, what happened there on the ground? And it's just bad. But I don't remember any of it. And then there was, on the flight home, I had an engine failure, and it wasn't a dramatic failure. Just it was slowly putting out less and less power. So the turbine was coming apart, and it couldn't generate the horsepower. So the temperatures were rising. It wasn't a big deal, wasn't dramatic, but very memorable. I remember that, engine failure and how we dealt with it. I remember the conversations that we had. I remember the airspeed we flew at, the profile as we came back, kind of single engine. But I remember it in a completely different place, in a completely different day, on a completely different mission. And I had to go talk, I found this out talking to people. Hey, yeah. And they're like, no, dude, that happened on this mission over here, the Marine mass casualty. And I went and checked in my diary, and it was real. It was true. And over time, my brain had just taken that memory and put it in some other it was like a bomb had gone off at that moment on that mission and just blew scattered remnants of my experience into other places. And so that was a very, very striking example of how I saw that under extreme stress, you remember things completely differently than how they actually occurred. And on the Roberts Ridge incident, we flew, word came down that Razor 03, a Spec Ops 47 had been shot up, and they managed to get down safely and intact, but shot down. And when a SEAL had fallen out the back, Neil Roberts, he'd been captured. They tried to go and rescue him. Then John Chapman was the Air Force combat controller was isolated and killed, and he was given a Medal of Honor. So all this was happening as we were flying in, and just absolute confusion, if you could imagine. Because, for example, I remember hearing on the radio that they had eyes on Neil Roberts, or they thought they did, because they don't know for sure. They think they can see an IR blob that they think is Neil Roberts, and they see people near him, some other blobs near him. And are those friendlies? Are those enemies? Did they go somewhere? And they're just trying to figure out what's happening, and it's just mass confusion. And by the time we arrived on scene, Razor 1 flew over the top of us, and moments later they were shot down on the peak. And that was the one, shot down, hit with an RPG. They come on down. I think 4 or 5, 3 Rangers and an air crew were killed within seconds by, heavy machine gun fire into that aircraft. And so just an absolutely horrific situation that's developing so much faster than anybody can figure out what's going on. So we went back to the FARP Texaco, same place we were before. We sat down on FARP Texaco, and just to give you an example of the stuff with the memories, there was a group of guys there, and don't know who they were. No uniforms, no patches, no name tags, etc. Clearly some kind of Spec Ops or CIA, I don't know. But they had one of the Spec Ops 47s. I don't know the call sign. I don't know if it was a Razor or what. But in my research, I've never been able to find out who those guys are. And I've talked to different people in different communities, and they say there was nobody there. But we sat with these guys for about an hour and had come up with a rescue plan, and actually took off with them to attempt a rescue. Got turned off a couple seconds later. We came back and landed. Not a big deal. But nobody can account for who those people were at FOB Texaco the morning of that incident. And I've had people tell me, no, there was nobody there. They were all over at a different place. But I have pictures of them at that place. Just in the background, you can see the guys and the helicopter. And so just my point is radically different understandings of who is where, doing what, with who. And it just breaks my heart when I see guys fighting, and tearing into each other. And just have a little grace.
They're all heroes in my book.
Yeah. They're
just being there.
Yeah. Yeah, just have a little grace for those warriors who put their ass on the line and they went through a horrific experience. And your brain just tries to process it and changes things. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we get back, I want to hear the story about when you became an honorary Night Stalker.
She'll hang rainbow flags on the wall, but not the 10 Commandments. To her, math is oppressive, grammar is colonial, but activism is essential. Every history lesson ends with, and that's why America is the problem. She won't correct spelling, but she'll correct pronouns. She won't open the classroom until her union demands are met. She says every child deserves options, except when it comes to choosing schools. She calls it personalized learning, but really it's just YouTube. She says parents are partners, but calls them extremists when they disagree. Every subject is political science, even gym. She teaches the 3 R's: recycling, resistance, and reparations. She is the most modern teacher in the world, armed with buzzwords, TikToks, and a taxpayer-funded therapy dog. But not every classroom is like hers. Some of us still believe kids deserve better. Better teachers, better values, better futures. At Papa Bear, we make things the traditional way, with American hands, local farms, and ingredients you can pronounce. Our original all-American premium tallow balm is a return to what works. Grass-fed tallow that feeds your skin like it used to. Cold-pressed olive oil to calm and repair. Raw honey to heal. Local beeswax to seal it all in. No fillers, no toxins, no guesswork. It delivers deep, lasting moisture without clogging your pores. It calms redness, restores balance, and helps your skin actually heal, instead of just covering it up. Papa Bear Naturals. Return to what works.
All right, so let's pick up in Iraq 2008.
This is a bit of a funnier story, I think. Let's see. So 2008, I was stationed at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, and we were doing a summertime, late spring, summertime rotation. And so we go to Iraq. We set in Balad. And then I was going to be taking a 2-ship up to Mosul. And up in Mosul, what we were doing is we were operating as a tertiary rescue force for some of the anti-terror units that were up there. And so they're up there, and they're playing whack-a-mole. You know, just using intel, locate the terrorists, locate the insurgents, then go out in the middle of the night, swoop in on them and do that whole business, do what needs to be done to those that need to be done. And so for us, we were just following around behind it, and it was demoralizing because they were the ones that were fighting the war. They were the ones that were getting it done. And then we were just there as a backup to the backup. And just literally following behind like ducks in a row, watch them go in, do the mission, take care of it, and then fly home. And then we just fly home and nothing happens. So it was Air Force Rescue had been doing that for several years, and it was there's always political power struggles going on about who's doing what, and we're burning up all this blade time and wearing out our crews for a mission that isn't so it's just politics gets involved. But the air crew were pretty down in the mouth about it, to just not rescue anything, not participate in anything, and just sitting there with your APU running, watching the war happen. So there was a lot of grumbling going on, but yeah, I was going to go up and do my turn, and that's that. And so we fly on up there and to Mosul and land, and the PJ crews that are up there are going to take me in and introduce me to the Delta guys that we're going to be supporting. And so walks me on up there, brings me into the little hooch. And as we walk into the hooch, there's this guy sitting there typing away on a laptop. And he looks like remember the action figure, the He-Man action figures from the 1980s where the body proportions don't work right? Like the shoulders are too broad, and it's just kind of not the normal human proportions. This guy was just a beast, and he's typing away, trying to get his big fingers on the laptop, and he's doing something, and he looks up at me as we walk in, and the PJ introduces me, and this Delta guy goes, "Hey, our airlift's down for the night. We just found a guy. Can you take us out?" And I'm trying to come up with an analogy of what this was the equivalent of. And so imagine you're a high school football player, and you got tickets to the Super Bowl, and so you're sitting up there in the stands at the Super Bowl, and the quarterback gets hurt out there on the field in the Super Bowl. And they look up in the stands and go, "Hey, does anybody know how to play quarterback?" You. And I go, "Yeah, I played a little ball back in high school." "Oh, get on down here, suit up. You're gonna run a few plays." It was absolutely absurd, but it was literally that, where the Super Bowl team is asking you to come down and play on the team for them.
And for the audience who are not Air Force, the Air Force is very strict. I mean, you're trained in specific mission sets. You're qualified. You're signed off. And then you go under the supervision of an experienced instructor, maybe.
Yes.
To just do a pickup game with Delta is like
not
going to happen.
With a mission set that you've never trained for and you know nothing about, and with other aircraft, because they fly with the DAP birds as well.
And what's a DAP bird?
That's a Black Hawk, and they've got these little extra wings that hang off of it, and they put they put the forward firing 30 millimeter cannons, miniguns, rockets, Hellfires. So it's
like their embedded close air support.
Yeah, and so that's a whole thing, and that is such a specific mission that they've got pilots who do nothing but that, kind of like the regular Army has their Apaches. So it's a very, very specific mission, and I know nothing about it, and that's part of the package. And so anyways, what I say is I would love to, but there's no way I can get permission for this. As awesome as this is, we can't do it. But I'll go send it. I'll go ask my chain of command. So I go scurry back to my talk, and we try the phones, and the phones don't work. For whatever reason, phone lines are down. We try the SATCOM. We try the SATCOM radio that's in the talk and the SATCOM radio that's in the helicopters. We actually get that fired up, and there's nothing but static. It's like some kind of space weather going on. And there's so much static, there's no SATCOM. And the last one is the internet connection, the Merc chat with the over the secure internet where you can get in chat rooms, and that's down. The internet's down. So all three forms of communication are down. And so I go back to the Delta guys, and I'm like, "Hey, look, I can't get any information. If you want to get permission for this, you're going to have to go through whatever channels you got and get a hold of my commander back there in Balad and see if you can get permission." And so they go, "All right, we'll check for it." So go back to their little hooch, and what they explained to me was they'd been tracking some guy for, I don't know, weeks or months, and they had just finally pinned him down. And they finally knew where he was with a high degree of certainty. And their helicopters were down for some kind of maintenance. So the Slick 60s that they had that would carry them, carry the assault force, are down for maintenance and can't do the mission. And the third element is that there's another team coming in and taking over the next day. they're just going to rotate out, and they don't want to hand this little cherry, this gem, off to the next guys because they did all the legwork and they found this guy, and so they want to bring him in. So it has to happen that night. And so I was trying to look at the odds that this had just fallen into my lap, where they just pinned this guy down after looking for him for weeks. Their helicopters are down for maintenance. There's a new, a new team coming in, rotating in the next day. My phones are down, my SATCOM's down, and my Merc chat's down. That's like a 6-digit lottery ticket right there. That it all adds up, and they're asking me to take them out, but I still don't think there's any way they're going to let us go. The air, yeah. So I go back to my little hooch and I start briefing up the guys on what's being requested. And, we still don't know if we're going to go. And then this guy pops in and he just leans in the back, the back of our little talk. And, he's wearing like, board shorts, flip flops, and a Chewbacca t-shirt or something like that. Later on, when they were asking me who this mystery man was,
that was the description.
Yeah, that was the description. Chewbacca t-shirt and flip flops. And he leans in and he goes, "Yeah, we talked to your colonel." He named the colonel by name, and he goes, "Yeah, and we got approval for the mission." And in retrospect, I probably should have thought a little bit more about who I was talking to. Who this fellow was, because if you think that human beings are the apex predators on planet Earth, among that apex, there is a very, very tiny apex of these Delta guys, and there is nothing that they won't do to get the job done. And that job needed to be done, and so he might not have been as forthright and Boy Scout honest as...
And let's be honest, you were probably happy to hear that because you have your alibi, maybe.
I don't know, but he can. So our joke is... Yeah, so the joke is on that, looking at this guy, he had black eyes, like a doll's eyes, that just look right through you. He just sees you as a piece of furniture that he's going to use to get the job done. So to leap forward, it turns out we actually did not have as much launch authority as I had been led to believe by this Delta guy. So I go over to their talk and start briefing up for the mission. And it's about like a 10-minute briefing, and I just can't even get through. And they want me to lead it, me to carry it, and essentially be the flight lead with me, my wingmen, and 2 DAP birds to go do this mission I know absolutely nothing about. And then there's actually another Slick 60 that will follow behind just to watch and observe. And I think they were just... It was one of their captains, and it's just like, hey, if things go really bad, he'll be there to help out. But all I've ever led is me and my aircraft. Excuse me, me and my wingman. That's it. That's all we always fight, just a flight of 2. And so now I'm going out leading a 5-ship, 3 different types of aircraft. I know nothing about two of the other aircraft. Our radios don't all work with each other, so we have to set up kind of a chain of, playing a game of telephone. I'll talk to these guys, my wingman talks to those guys, and then we'll talk to each other and tell each other what the other guy was just saying and what just wants to do. And then there's the Delta guys themselves with their plan and what they want to do. So it's already... I'm trying to appear bored, but clearly I'm not. I'm just like, oh my God, can I even handle this? And so a very interesting thing I saw, though, talk about this in the book. I call it a flexible mindset. a way to behave with different mindsets in the way that the situation demands. And so you know how thorough and meticulous those guys are when they have time to plan. When they have time to plan for like a Maduro takedown or a Bin Laden raid, every conceivable detail is accounted for. And they will train for months stepping through it. If this happens, I do this. If that happens, I do that again and again and again and again until every conceivable, so they can't fail. They practice until they can't fail when they have the time. And when they don't have the time, they become completely different people. And that mindset, their flexible mindset changes, and they can be adaptable on the fly, make it happen. Just do it, bro. Because I went up to one of these DAP guys and I just wanted to get a feel for how they operate. I don't know how their attack patterns work. If something happens, because we have side-firing weapons. So we have a very specific attack pattern for side-firing weapons. They have forward-firing weapons. And I just wanted to get a feel for how they behave. So if something went wrong, I would know what they're going to do. And he goes, and so I asked him what I should do. And he goes, just get out of the way, dude.
So the deconfliction plan.
Yeah,
what's the
deconfliction? What's our altitude separation? What's the Beano line? What's the code word? What's the attack axis? How do I call it out? And he's like, just get out of the way, bro.
We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
We'll continue mission.
Yeah, he goes, if someone's shooting from you over here, you go over there. And that's it. And so it's a simple, humorous little thing, but he was genuinely comfortable with that. And then just had no anxiety, no pause, just this situation requires immediate action, so he could do immediate action. And you'll see people who can't do that. They're either caught in the meticulous mindset and can never change. And if you demand that they act quickly, kind of like say a quarterback falling back into the pocket, he's got 3 seconds to make a decision. Some people can't do that. And they freeze up and they need to know everything. And so, but these guys, they could just flip back and forth.
Probably not going to make it in the 160th if you need that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so that was an amazing lesson where I got to see how they can just in an instant transform their mindset to be perfect in the situation in which they find themselves. And so, yeah, that's a skill that needs to be trained for and recognized. Okay, so we brief this up, come up with our big game plan, get out of the way, So, so I go back to my guys, I brief them our big game plan, and we go out and here's the next lesson from this story is the tiniest, most minute attention to detail can have absolutely stunningly catastrophic follow-on effects if you don't do it right with the tiniest little detail. So we're going to be carrying so much weight that we have to dump gas. So me and my wingman, we take off and we go and we dump gas. We dump off, I can't remember, a couple 1,000 pounds. We're going to come back and pick up our loads, and then I'll go do the mission. So I go up, I dump gas, I come back. My wingman, and so if I can show you some little switchology, here we go, perfect.
Try to describe it for the listeners.
How you dump gas. Okay, so there's a switch that you dump gas with, and there's a plastic safety cover over the top so you can't accidentally bump it. So they lift the safety cover, and they turn the switch to start dumping gas. So gas starts pumping over the side, out through the dump tube. When they were done, they're supposed to grab the switch with their finger, move the switch, and then throw the safety cover. That's how you're supposed to do it to be safe. But they got a little bit lazy. And what they did was they just threw the safety cover down. The safety cover is supposed to push the switch itself. And in 999 out of 1,000 attempts, that will work. But what happened was months, it could have been years, months or years earlier, maintenance had put the wrong safety cover on that panel. And so when they threw the safety cover down, the switch stayed on and dumping continued. And so they throw the safety cover down. They think the switch has been thrown. It hasn't, and dumping continues. And so they reference the checklist, and we have a flawed checklist. The checklist does not say, check the switch. The checklist immediately jumps to pull a circuit breaker. And the circuit breaker turns off the fuel pump that's doing the dumping. So the fuel dumping does stop. It looks like things are great. But what they don't realize is with that scenario, with the switch in that position and the circuit breaker pulled, the valve on that tube is still open. So they have an open tube from their fuel tank leading out. So the valve is still open. They haven't thought about what this is going to lead to, though. They don't really know. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind there. Their little minor hiccup they think is complete. We come back in, we land, we load up all the guys. We've got we got dogs, we got guys, pipe hitters, we got dogs and cats living together.
Ladders.
Yeah, ladders, things sticking out the side. Look back, there's one of those, the Malinois. It's like, that thing gonna eat me? I mean, those things, it's like a velociraptor. When they look at you, they're like, how can I eat him?
I love the dogs, man.
Oh my God, dude, there's just something in their eyes. They're just, those things are amazing. Okay, so we take off, we start flying. So now I'm leading a 5-ship. I've only just led one other aircraft. We're flying along. Everything is going wrong. The nav system, my co-pilot is having trouble with the nav system. It's pointing off 90 degrees. Taking us to the wrong spot. So now we're just navigating off just following the river. Just hey, follow the river. I'm trying to solve this nav system problem before we get too far. We're trying to communicate through that broken line of communication, playing telephone between me and my wingman, and then my wingman's flare system got a false missile launch warning. This happens all the time. You fly by some kind of heat source, and your defensive system thinks it's a missile, gives you a warning sound, and should throw flares off the aircraft. They got the warning light, the warning sound, and no flares came off the aircraft. And so they think their system is malfunctioning. And they're like, oh my God, our defensive systems are broken. The flares won't come off. If we take a man-pad shot, we're done. And in fact, if it had been a man-pad shot, they would have been dead.
Like a surface-to-air.
Yeah, if a surface-to-air missile had come at them, their flares didn't come off. And so now they're like, hey, we can't do the mission. We're mission ineffective. We can't go. And so, to spoil the ending, it was all because of the switch.
Disabled, right?
Correct, because if the system knows that the valve is open. If that valve is open, the system disables itself so that you can't have flares and fuel going off at the same time. They don't know this, though. It doesn't tell you that. But that little attention to detail had just inopt their defensive system, and if it had been a real missile launch, they would have been killed. And so an amazing demonstration of how that attention to detail can lead to mission failure. Okay, so now Chalk 2 doesn't want to go. And the question being, can we go into this threat environment? So now we have to ask a question, hey, just with our 10 minutes of planning, I don't have these answers. What kind of, threats are in the area? How far away will we be? What's our approach aspect? Et cetera. And so we're trying to solve this, and we're trying to come up with an alternate plan where we get down there and then I do both lifts. We'll get down to some other place, we'll land, and now a single helicopter can transload the whole team. This requires a different fuel planning, different power planning, different route planning. And then the team themselves have to do a new risk assessment. Can the team be split up for this amount of time? What risk does that say? How should they adjust their plan? What are the new coordinates for all this? So trying to come up with a whole new plan on the fly with 5 different players that I can't talk to directly, playing telephone while we're trying to get the nav system back up and running and try and get my wingman's defensive flare system working.
And you're just ticking down to the objective this whole time.
And my brain, did Pulp Fiction. The scene in Pulp Fiction where the gun goes off in the back of the car and Marvin gets his brains blown over the back of the
That was you.
That was my brains all over the windscreen. Just, God, I just could not believe that my one chance to do something, cool, and it's absolutely coming off the rails in every conceivable way. It was just, once again, just like some kind of comedy show. This can't really be happening. And so as we're getting down there, we're slowly, just one by one, getting these individual problems solved. We finally get the nav system working. I finally come up with a plan where we'll do the insert far enough away where my Chalk 2 will be safe if there is some kind of missile shot. And then the Delta guys, they're good with that new route, because there's a new route they have to cover, all kinds of stuff. So we finally slowly get it done. Long story short, we get the insert done, put them in, then go to our holding spot, and we wait. And them and their DAPs, they do all their stuff. They call for extraction. Everything's good to go. They got a jackpot. We come over. We just fly back to where they are, pull them out, extract them, and go back to that waiting point because there's fuel there. So we go back to the fuel spot. And now here's where that detail comes into play again. Okay, so now everything's great. Mission's done, got the guy, nobody's hurt, and now we're gonna fly home. We just got to refuel and fly home. I taxi into the hot pits, get my fuel. The other Slick 60, he still has his fuel, and now my wingman goes in to get fuel. So,
and just for the audience, hot pits are where you fuel up with the engines running.
Mm-hmm. And they go in to refuel, and remember the valve is open on the dump pump.
Oh no!
And so they pull into parking, and it's nighttime. And the fuel hose is on the left, and the dump tube is on the right side of the helicopter. So they're just fueling up. They think they're fueling up, and the entire time the fuel's coming in the left and dumping out the right, out that dump tube. And so they're just sitting in a big puddle of fuel. And I think, the joke is the guy who's refueling wonders why his feet are getting cold, It's like down. But we can laugh about it, but it could have been catastrophic, because if the winds had been just right and the the winds come through, affect that rotor wash, and if it had blown some of that misted fuel back up through the rotor and recirculated it through the engine and that ignited, it could have killed them all. I mean, accidents in refueling pits are a big thing that occurs and have killed so many aircrew, and it didn't. So thank God the winds were just right, kept that fuel mist away from the engines. They saw it wasn't, what had happened in time, and were able to stop the refueling and taxi away. So that happened, and now that fuel pit, the rest of the guys can't get fuel. So they don't have fuel to get home, and the DAP birds don't have fuel to get home. So now we're trying to figure out how does everybody get home. And so it's just one last problem. It's just like, oh my dear God, can anything more go wrong? And so long story short, they find a water truck somewhere there. Yeah, they talk to some fire guys. They've got a water truck, and they're able to bring the water truck over, wash the fuel out, and we finally figure out what's wrong with Chalk 2. Finally start doing some more troubleshooting and,
putting all the pieces together.
And now because they were so distracted by everything. Everybody's brains were exploding before, and that's why they didn't have to put the brain bites into it. But now that things were kind of paused and done, they start put the pieces together, look at it, and they're, that was all because of the switch. So they get the switch done. All right, we're good. We got the water, got the fuel washed away, get everybody fueled up, and we're able to get home and pull that off. And so we get back, we land, and I also realized that with all that chaos, the guys that were riding in the back, they didn't really know it happened. They weren't up comms listening to that clown show. They just knew we showed up, we took off, we landed, came back, picked them up, took them home. So they were happy, and I was happy, and things were pretty good. And then my happiness came to a very abrupt end when I started to realize that because the phones were working now and the internet was working now, and word had come back that Mr. Chewbacca T-shirt hadn't been entirely forthcoming on getting approval for the mission. And that the deputy CFAC from Qatar was in an airplane on his way.
Oh no! So you're like high-fiving, feeling on top of the world.
And I'm realizing this is my last. That was my last flight in a Air Force aircraft. Think of the. What was the line? I'm sorry, I love movies, but Tombstone, he goes, and tell him that hell's coming with me, or what? Hell was coming with him when the deputy CFAC was on his way up.
So how'd that call with your commander go?
Oh God. Oh geez. So I get on the phone, and it sounded very much like the taking. I'm recording it like it was being recorded, and it was like, all right, it is 0800 Zulu local time. So and so is present. It sounded like they were taking official statements, and I'm trying to explain to them who exactly it was that had given us approval, and all I've got is the Chewbacca T-shirt and and flip flops description, and it's not going over well. It's not being taken as correct launch authority. So that was going downhill fast. And so I wasn't there when the deputy CFAC arrived down there in Balad to find out what was going on. And it was not going well. He was not pleased. And, okay, so I wasn't there to see this, but as I've been told, he was in there and he's lighting up my commander. And this other character, his name's Russ. He's just one of the best guys you could ever meet. He's a character. He's like, I don't know, maybe 6'2", 150 pounds, a scarecrow who's all elbows and knees. He's just one of the best pilots you could ever meet, the best officers. And he's just got this mouth that just runs and runs and runs and runs. Kind of like one of those anime characters with the big mouth that just flaps around. But what's always coming out of his mouth is solid gold. And apparently this 2 stars laying into my commander, and Russ walks in, this captain, and he got his hands on his hips and he goes, "Now, General, I don't know about you, but I'd rather have flight leads that I don't have to push out the door." I'd rather have flight leads that I have to hold back. Says something like that. So some pearl of wisdom of, if you want war fighters, they're going to be out there fighting wars. And the general just kind of, okay, I guess you're right. And
so, it worked out.
So, like I said, I wasn't there for that. That's what somebody told me, but it makes for a great story. And so, yeah.
Just kind of water under the bridge.
So I don't know what happened from there, but my commander, God, great guy. He himself made general, so his career was great, and he held the line for me and stood up for it, and
you love to see when the good ones make it up to flag officer rank.
That was great, and he had done an exchange with the task force when he was a young captain, and so he knew how those guys operated, and yeah.
All right, so you got to tell the story real quick of the prank the next day.
Okay, so the prank that was pulled in the aftermath of this, there's been a lot of heat came down, and we were trying to be on our best behavior. And so Russ and another guy who's still who's kicking ass, they came up with a prank back in our talk.
So tactical operations
So
center.
our little headquarters. So they're setting up a prank for the watch officer for that night. And so you got to understand how a lot of the information flows in a war. It's literally through chat rooms, Merc chat. So you got the big boards, you got the big screens, and there's just chat windows up there. And at the top of each chat window, there's a title of where that information is coming from. So like there's a Mosul chat room. So let's say Mosul_talk. They had created fake chat rooms that looked like the Mosul chat room. It was like Mosul-talk, something like that. So it looked, if you didn't pay attention to that one little change in the title, you would think you were seeing the Mosul command center. So they create this fake chat room, and then they recreated all the fake people who would be talking in that chat room. So once again, just one little thing is off. That's why they were allowed to create it. But if you glance up at it, it looks like you're looking at Mosul, and you're looking at all the people who talk. And then every time somebody communicates, and there's a little timestamp of when that message was sent. And so they spend several hours creating the fake chatter that would go on in that window for a ground assault force. So there's going to be a ground assault with vehicles that's going to go after some insurgent somewhere and do a hit, but with vehicles. And so they spend several hours creating all the fake chatter that would go in as the reconnaissance assets get into position and the ground forces get into position and everything that goes into it. It's all being created, but it's all fake. And then they start creating the ground assault force has left. And then suddenly the force encounters opposition, and now there's a firefight going on, and this whole battle is going on. And the little code word is TIC, tick, troops in contact. And every time there's a tick appears, the little computer just sends out a little warning ding, ding, ding. And so they start, so the computer starts dinging. And the watch officer is like, "Oh wow, looks like something's gone up in Mosul. Okay. Looks like it happens all the time. But still, his attention is slowly starting to see there's some hot action going on up in Mosul, and so they've created this whole battle going on, and then they start inserting. Oh gosh, sorry, I got to back up. Just before the ground assault force leaves, there's a conversation how they don't have enough people. That they don't have anybody to man the 50 cal guns on the lead assault vehicle. And then and so they're looking for somebody to come along. And then they had inserted, hey, we found 2 Air Force guys that have volunteered to come along on the ground assaults.
This is so good.
And so, oh yeah, we found 2 Air Force guys who will go. And so they named me and my co-pilot.
Who had just gone on the...
who had just got away with the skin of our teeth from getting scalped. And so if you're reading this, it looks like we had just volunteered for this and we're leaving. Okay, so now so I'm now back to the big attack is going on. We're running low on ammo. And they're calling for the quick reaction force to come in. So it looks like a big battle's going on. And so now the guys... Russ and his buddy spring the trap. They go to the watch officer and they're like, hey, John, have you seen what's going on up in Mosul? You might want to take a look at this. So the watch officer starts back scrolling. So now he's like, wow, that's a big fight going on. He's scrolling and looking back. And he starts seeing the info and he thinks that me and my co-pilot are out on this ground assault and we're on the 50 cals. And so now he's fully reeled in. He thinks we're on the assault. And now Russ is back there, throwing in, he's writing a novel of, oh my God, he's taking fire. It's getting a little ridiculous, but
Major Mangan needs resupply.
Those Air Force guys are killing him. And so now the watch officer's name was John. He was the flight lead for the 06 Bravo mission. So that's a whole nother freaking Zero crazy story. Because me and him had done this insane mission back in 2003. And so he's absolutely losing his mind. Like he's just screaming, no, just at the top of his lungs, screaming, no, that this is happening. And he's like, you can't hide this. We can't, this is too big now. Because Russ is back there making it into like a Medal of Honor something situation is developing. He's like, it can't be swept under the rugs. So he runs out to go get the commander, wake him up and bring him in.
No, wake up the old man.
Wake up the old man and bring him into an absolute disaster. And so while he's out going to grab the commander, the pranksters go and delete all of that. So they just go and they delete the whole...
The fake war.
The whole fake war is gone, and they bring up the real one. There's nothing going on. It's just crickets up there. So, of course, he brings in the commander. He's like, and of course, it's not there anymore. And, so they figured it out pretty quick, because the guys...
Did they just start bursting out laughing?
Yeah. So they figured it out. The guys are just dying laughing back there, and they realized what had been going on. But I think that was, that was one of the most clever pranks I'd ever seen.
That's so funny, man. When people ask me if I miss flying, if I wish I was back, I don't really miss the flying. Kind of been there, done that, but I miss the people because it's like genuinely the funniest, smartest, most creative people you'll ever work with anywhere.
And it's the. So heck, let me tell you. So this guy John, the watch officer, they just pulled the prank on. He was a flight lead on. There's a book. There was a special ops mission with British special ops. The book is called 06 Bravo. I could talk for another 2 hours about that. 2 British special ops guys go missing. They're on a quad. They're running across the desert. They're being pursued by an Iraqi mechanized division, and they go running into Syria. We go chasing after them. And so that was like probably a 14-hour mission deep behind enemy lines back in 2003. Got to go into Syria. Syrian jets came and chased us out. I mean, so all this crazy stuff. Insane story, but the flight lead was this guy, John. if you met John in real life, like he's into Magic the Gathering. He's the guy.
Nerd.
He's the guy playing Magic the Gathering with his card games, and he's into juggling and magic tricks and wizard battles and all this other stuff. And you throw that guy into a Pave Hawk, and he is the biggest combat stud you could ever ask for. And just unflappable, solving problems, getting it done, going into the, he took us into the, there's an Iraqi armored division out there. We're playing around with them, going into Syria. Syrian ground troops were there, searching there. Like I said, the Syrian Air Force came and showed up. And he's just dealing with it in stride. Just every single thing was completely, once again, so far outside of our mission set that it was absurd. It's just fantastical about how far outside of our mission set and our training all of this is. And he just does it. And so I just think he imagines he's having like a little wizard battle up there. What would Harry Potter do? And he just does it. And it's, so these people that you meet are just so amazing and so varied and just characters out of a book.
And you never know. It's like you never know who's going to excel in combat too.
Yeah.
Like you said, just you wouldn't even expect these people if you met them in a coffee shop, just complete normal Joes.
Yeah.
And then you put them in war.
Yeah. How many Pokemon points you got today? The guy's a total stud in combat. I don't know. Yeah, but that is really what I miss the most is the people, the situations, and just seeing what it brings out. And it was always the best. It just brought out the best side of humanity. And it was always just such a privilege to see that.
So what was the motivation or like the genesis of the book? Like what made you get working on that?
Okay. So I had my career, active duty, and I got out. And so now you're out of the, you're out of the chaos, the grind, that day-to-day survival. And I was teaching in the simulators. So I was teaching the brand new, initial qualification students how to fly the Pave Hawk, how to do our mission set, etc. And so I started recreating these missions I'd been on. I could literally go into the database and go to the exact same place in Afghanistan or Iraq, place the threats, place the friendlies, and start giving it to the students.
This is like all in a virtual world in a simulator.
Yeah. We're in a cockpit. The cockpit's identical, and the graphics are amazing. It's actual kind of like Google Earth satellite imagery. Hey, there's that house. I remember that house down there. There's the hill. There's the ridge line. Hey, there's the canal. That's where the bad guy. That's where the enemy position was. And so I can recreate it, and we fly into it and do the mission. And so there were certain mistakes that were made, and people did some things, myself included, where I always thought that was a personal failing. Where, oh my God, he just got scared, got confused, or just that guy wasn't made for combat. Can't believe he did that. That was ridiculous. And in this case, flying directly over a known enemy position, getting himself shot, then going and doing it again. And so I would throw these students into these situations, and I could get them to do the exact same things. And I could do it with initial qual students, and then I could even do it with more advanced students. We would have flight leads or instructor candidates coming in for programs, and I could get them to do the exact same mistakes flying over known enemy positions. And so I started to go, hey, that's not a personal failing, that's a human failing. What's going on? And so I started rereading those books on killing and on combat. Those are amazing books. And just seeing that combat psychology, what happens to your brain. And he starts to explain why that happens. Your forebrain shuts down, and those patterned, the behavior patterns below come out and drives your behavior. And so those books, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble remembering the author's name.
He's like a retired lieutenant colonel,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I know.
On Killing and On Combat.
You can look it up.
Phenomenal,
They're great books.
phenomenal books. He didn't. So he points out the problem, but didn't really offer many solutions. And so I just started reading some other books, and I got into sports psychology. And sports psychology has it all. And so it shows you how to solve those problems and the mindsets you use, the behaviors you use, and how you train yourself to minimize stress, keep your forebrain in the fight, and how not to make those mistakes. And so that was what started it. And so I started reading it, and I was like, man, these guys got it all dialed in. It's been here. Why aren't we using this? Why wasn't I taught about controlled drift of focus? Hey, here's these things you think about. Do not think about these things. And so you have a structured way in that you control your own thinking. Focus control. How do I control my focus? What happens to my focus when I am presented with a danger? So don't want to go too far down there because I'll start talking for a couple hours.
Dude, there's so much in the book too. Like like what we have touched on so far is like the highlights.
Yeah. So
like,
I'm intentionally avoiding going into that because you might not come out. But what happens to my focus when I present to danger? My focus is going to collapse onto the danger, and I can't see the solution. So how do I break my focus away from the scary threat and start finding solutions? And so what are the techniques do I use? And there's verbal techniques, there's breathing techniques, there's, very, very quickly. You have a pre-practiced way to deal with very specific emergencies. Engine fire. You could recite your boldface. We have all these ways to deal with emergencies that you beat into your midbrain, right? Practice it over and over and over, and you say it, and you write it, and you write it. You should also have a very practiced and prepared way to deal with any emergency. Emergency occurs. What is the very first thing you do?
Maintain aircraft control.
Wrong.
Roll upside down and pull.
Yeah. So you have all of these. So anyway, so that's what's in the book is how you learn how your brain responds. For example, your brain has 3 separate responses to a new emergency that occur at different times. And so you have to pause. And your logical problem-solving brain is the last thing to respond. So you have to wait. If something happens, you pause. You take a deliberate pause. Because that very first thing, the very fast hands in the cockpit, that's just hard science. There's a different part of your brain controlling the fast hand in the cockpit that yanks off your good engine. So you have to pause and wait so that your logical forebrain can arrive on scene, evaluate things, and then begin making good decisions. So that's all that stuff. And so seeing how that has all been already out there in the world of sports psychology, I applied it to aviation, brought it over, wrote the book on it, and then that also just applies to life. And it teaches you, hey, you got a screaming kid, your teenager does something really stupid. How do I deal with that? Problems with, arguments with your spouse. Why do we keep having the same problems and the same arguments that we fall back to our emotional lizard brains are just battling it out? How do I stop that and actually move forward? And so it really applies to life across the board. So to answer your question, that's kind of how it began.
No, it's great stuff. I'll link it in the show notes.
Okay.
And if you're an aspiring pilot, you're a young pilot, you definitely should read it. But I would also encourage basically anyone to read it because it's just full of gems. I mean, it's like a lifetime of wisdom and lessons learned through hundreds of combat sorties. Yeah. So I really hope people buy the book and read it. Yeah. Last thing I want to talk about, and we had talked about a little bit previously, but is how you personally dealt with coming off of all this combat stress and how that affected you and what you've done to kind of get where you are now.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think there's a lot of talk about PTSD and what PTSD specifically is. There's so much material on that that's discussed very, very in depth by people who are so far more knowledgeable and advanced than me. But I think maybe I could add just a couple different perspectives on kind of the cumulative stresses that you face. PTSD, your fight or flight response gets turned on and doesn't want to turn off. You have memories that, intrusive memories and thoughts and emotions that you can't control, things that trigger it. A scent, a sound, a picture, a memory, whatever. And that activates your fight or flight responses. Very, very well discussed. But if I could just also throw in there a discussion about what affects that on sleep disruptions, this is what I learned on how the disruption of your sleeping cycles contributes to that. Your sense of control, autonomy, and agency during the stressful event, as well as your sense of purpose during the stressful event. I haven't really heard anybody discuss that too much, but I think it's worth talking about. And I think a lot of people have seen this play out since how Afghanistan ended. This sense of a lack of purpose. I think a lot of people have seen that they made these sacrifices, they did these things, they gave so much, and then the seemingly purposelessness of it retroactively made the traumatic experience so much worse. Where, as I've heard people say, it was all for nothing. And so that makes those experiences so much more terrible. And so you have to develop your sense of purpose of who you are and why you're doing those things. Leadership has to develop it as well among the people they lead. Make sure your people understand why they're there and what they're doing it for. And very often for the guy next to me. And it doesn't matter how screwed up the big political picture is or what happens for the war, your sacrifice was noble and good for what you did in that moment, and you did the right thing. And, for me, it was pretty easy with rescue. It's very, very easy. Just knowing, hey, I'm going out and I'm saving a human life. It doesn't matter how bad the political situation is. But then when you move into other career fields, it can be much more difficult, much more missions, different mission sets, such as, what you went through. And it takes a lot of soul searching. And I'd say take the time. Take the time so that you know in your heart why you're doing what you're doing and the value that it has. The people who get to come home because of what you did. And so that's the purpose side of it.
That's really like the only thing you can hang your hat on at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just feel such a deep sense of betrayal by the leadership, the political leaders that really just led us into that situation and let it go on for so long.
Yeah. And so it's about examining your own life and what you do and finding the purpose in it, and taking that time to believe in yourself and what you do. And so that's, and what I want to hit there is leadership has such an important part of that. About making sure the people understand, their people and their unit understand what will happen if they don't do their job. If you don't do this, this is the consequences. And we prevent that from happening by doing what we do and sacrificing what we sacrifice. And I think that's incredibly important. Let's see. For another aspect of it, which I hadn't heard, is grief. Acute grief of what you see and do is not PTSD, but it's very similar. And it has a lot of similar impacts, whether it's sleep disruptions or short temper, and dealing with what you saw and the sides of humanity that you dealt with. And so when we would go out to these mass casualties and you're like, why? What was this? Because a truck filled with kids, drove over some old Soviet landmine that's been sitting there for 20 years. It's like, what's the reason behind that? There is no reason. Why did this happen? And so that, you got to dive in, you got to face that. And it's like, what is, and this goes into, what do you believe God is? What do you believe right and wrong is? What do you believe life is? Why does God allow suffering? That's one of those eternal questions. Why does God allow suffering, and did this have any meaning? And then, what is suffering? And so for me, one of the things that I found was the way that I was able to process that and let go of it is that my understanding of God is that if you are, imagine if God is a fire, the divine fire, and we are all sparks that were thrown from that fire. And then we all return to the fire someday. For an eternal being, the suffering that we have here on earth is nothing. And so if you have that perspective of an eternal perspective, what we go through and what we lose is not that bad. Like I remember as a kid losing a pet toad. I had a toad. And the toad died. And I remember the pain. I remember the grief that I don't know how old I was, 5 or 6, I don't know. But I do remember the pain, and the pain was real. It was real grief. That little teeny kid, sobbing my eyes out, and the pain was so horrible because my toad had died. So my parents had sympathy for me, but they knew that it would pass. They knew that it wasn't a big deal, and that as I moved and changed and grew, it would be okay. And so I took that view into, what do we deal with grief, our grief and our pain from an eternal point of view? It's temporary, and it's going to pass, and we're going to be okay. And so that's how I was able to work through some of that grief. And so those are questions that you should ask yourself when you go through those horrible experiences. Try and dig into that and get through it. And so I kind of went through that journey. So dealing with purpose, dealing with grief. So something you can do going into situations, this is another thing with leadership, is trying to develop a sense of agency and control during those traumatic events. We have a phenomenon in our community where, because we're a crewed aircraft, with PJs and flight engineers, we go out and we do some mission, and the pilots will have some degree of stress from this. But our flight engineers and gunners and PJs will very often have a much worse experience. And for them, it was far more traumatic because they had no control during those events. And so the guy who's up there flying, making decisions, he's involved, he's acting, he's...
Like a sense of agency.
And a sense of agency. I'm involved, I'm doing these things. And I can mitigate, I can accept risk, I can deny risk, I can mitigate. And their level of trauma is much less than the guys who are just being dragged through it. I mean, that's to sit there. For example, when we were sitting there in that LZ in Anaconda, just sitting there and taking it and just waiting to get hit was that most horrible part of the experience. But when you're doing something, it's not. So a mindset, it's in the book, it's called NAIL, Next Anticipated Lethal Event, where you're just thinking about what is the next thing that can go wrong, the most lethal thing that will happen, and what will my response be to it if it occurs. And then you visualize yourself doing it. If I take fire from that place over here, I'll be braking right over there, and you can actually visualize yourself, for you, for me, powering up, braking, putting in, punching off, your chaff or your flares, whatever. And so you're actively involved. And so that is not just sitting here waiting for terrible things to happen. You're actively predicting and you're actively making decisions. And then you're actively visualizing yourself solving that problem and dealing with it. And that, it's not a cure-all, but it is a small thing you can do to keep yourself involved and have a sense of agency that I'm not just helpless here. I'm not just taking it. I'm not just being traumatized. I'm an active participant and I'm solving problems. And that, I feel that decreases the amount of trauma that some of these things have. The last thing is sleep disruptions. When you have something horrific happens and you have this thought, in a natural, healthy environment, through your sleep cycles, that experience moves from your immediate memory more into your long-term memory, which is harder to access. And so typically in a combat environment, you'll go out and you'll have some traumatic, scary event, and you come back and you get crappy sleep, terrible or no sleep. And I can't go into all the neurological processes, but
it's a spiral.
Yeah, but it interrupts the process by which that experience should have been pushed into your long-term memory. It never gets there, and it kind of stays jammed up in your immediate memory. And that's one of the reasons you get those intrusive thoughts that won't go away. So there are some great, I went to some therapy programs where you go and you, what worked for me is you essentially relive the experience in excruciating detail. And that was actually where I found that I had those memory gaps. You relive it in excruciating detail. And when you're reliving it, it is tough. It is some rough stuff, man. And then you go to sleep and they would give you some sleep meds. And then you come back again, you do it the next day, and you do it the next day. You just keep doing that over and over with that sleep cycle, experiencing it, then have a sleep cycle. And by the end of it, I was just like, oh, do we have to do this again? I was bored with it. And so for me, that really, really worked, where the first time we did it, absolute hot mess. And by the end of it, literally just, can we please get this over with? I'm bored with this. And it was like it was vanishing. And so for me, at least, that system was extremely effective to getting sleep cycles back. And so.
Dude, that's incredible stuff, man.
I can just throw that out there.
Absolutely.
So there's ways, man. There's hope.
Well, man, I'm honored that you took the time to come out here. I hope everyone buys the book. I mean, like I said, it's full of wisdom for really anything.
I do seminars and workshops as well. So
okay, where can people find you?
Let's see. I've got my website, John Mangan Books, and there's there's my email on there, johnmanganbooks@gmail.com. And so, I travel around now and I get to go work with people, everything from first responders, military units, doing some corporate events as well, just teaching people how to deal with stress. We've got stuff like, hey, just even office stress. Hey, boss is on me for this. I got to make this decision, that decision. How do I do that with a clear mind, not being driven by fear? And so, so it's a really, really broad spectrum of stuff where that applies. And I love getting out and working with people.
All right. Well, look him up. Again, man, I'm just honored you came out here and honored to call you a friend. Yep. I mean, you guys are always heroes to me. Yeah. We were, in the wheel above you, and the things you did for this country. I mean, I'm just grateful you're here telling these stories to really just, not just you personally, but to everybody in the rescue community.
Can I just tell you one A-10?
Yes.
Well, okay. The 06 Bravo mission, we went behind enemy lines in 2003 in Iraq looking for these two British guys. And so we went in alone and unafraid. Me and John, my wizard battle flight lead up there, leading us in there. So we're on our own, deep inside Iraq, and we got nothing but those little miniguns shooting the little 30 cals. And we landed out at this airfield, and 4 A-10s arrive. They come spiraling down. We land, or excuse me, they land. We come over. We come up with a plan to go find these guys. Awesome. We all gear up. A-10s take up. We take off, and now we're going up. There's an Iraqi armored division up there somewhere. We're trying to avoid. But I had changed into from before the A-10s arrived, and now we got 4 A-10s overhead. I became like the little short man Joe Pesci in
with Arnold there with you.
Yeah, I got like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. You talking to me? Or was that? I don't know which one was that. Do I amuse you? You think I'm funny? I got that little short man syndrome now that I got 4 A-10s.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to start a fight? Why don't you talk to my friends up here?
Love it.
Having you guys overhead, you don't even know what that does to guys on the ground. It was an absolute religious experience. Like somebody showed, because we know, and it's not just the machine, man. You guys just got the biggest set of church bells, and you're gonna deal with any problem we've got. And it was just like a magic elixir having you along. I've never forgot how that felt.
Dude, it's the best team, man.
Yeah, it is, man. I miss that. I do miss that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, John Mangan, thanks for coming.
All right, thanks, buddy. Cheers.